I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's take a look at top stories. Iran closes Hormuz Strait again over U.S. blockade. Vessels trying to cross Hormuz report gunfire. Pope Leo XIV heads to Angola in landmark Africa visit amid Trump clash. And world leaders tackle security, trade and climate on day 2 of Antalya Diplomacy Forum. There are conflicting statements from the United States and Iran over the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, with both sides giving different accounts of access and control. The situation has escalated further with new Iranian military warnings and reports of vessels being targeted in the waterway.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard says the Strait of Hormuz has returned to its previous state and is under strict control, blaming the United States for the situation. It accuses Washington of piracy and maritime interference through its naval blockade of Iranian ports and warns restrictions will remain until full freedom of navigation is restored for Iranian vessels. Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei has also said the country's navy is ready to inflict new bitter defeats on its enemies, referring to Israel and the United States. Before the latest escalation, maritime trackers showed limited but ongoing movement through the Strait of Hormuz, including a convoy of 8 tankers transiting the waterway, the largest such passage since the conflict began 7 weeks ago, with Iran saying ships could pass only on routes it controls. Shortly after Iran announced tighter control, maritime security sources said at least 2 merchant vessels came under gunfire while attempting to cross the strait. Hours earlier, US President Donald Trump said the strait was fully open and ready for normal passage.
This will be a great and brilliant day for the world, because Iran has just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and ready for business and full passage. But the naval blockade, with the greatest navy in the world, from the greatest military the world has ever seen, we built it during my first term. We built it. They said I was crazy. We weren't so crazy, were we? Will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete and fully signed.
However, Iranian officials, including the parliamentary speaker, have rejected these claims, saying US statements were inaccurate and insisted even then that the strait was not fully open. Iran also has partially reopened its airspace to international flights, according to state media, with routes over the eastern part of the country now accessible. The airspace had been closed since the start of US-Israeli attacks in late February.
No date has been set for the next round of talks between Iran and the United States, according to Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister. He says both sides must first agree on a framework of understanding before negotiations can continue. The latest high-level talks in Islamabad ended without a deal, despite what Iran describes as some progress. Tehran blames what it calls excessive U.S. demands, particularly over its nuclear program, for the deadlock. U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested more direct talks could take place soon, but diplomats say that may be difficult to arrange. Iranian officials insist any agreement must follow international law.
Then this maximalist approach by the other side, trying to make Iran an exception in international law, prevented us to reach an agreement. I have to be very crystal clear that Iran would not accept to be an exception from the international law. Anything that we are going to be committed, we are going to commit within these international regulations.
The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon is holding on its first full day, with displaced families beginning the long journey back to southern Lebanon. But despite a relative calm, key questions over security and long-term stability remain unresolved.
The Israel-Lebanon ceasefire is holding on its first full day, raising cautious hope after weeks of fighting. Thousands of displaced families are returning to southern Lebanon, crowding main highways and crossing damaged routes as they head back to devastated towns and neighborhoods. The United Nations says Israeli airstrikes have stopped in southern Lebanon, and no rockets have been fired into Israel from Lebanese territory since the truce began. The 10-day ceasefire announced by the United States took effect late Thursday and aims to create space for negotiations. But the situation remains fragile. US President Donald Trump said in a social media post that Israel has been barred from further bombing in Lebanon in a rare public warning to a close ally. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office did not immediately respond to Trump's remarks. Earlier, Netanyahu said Israeli forces remain stationed in southern Lebanon to counter what he described as near threats, including rockets and drones, adding that further actions are planned but not publicly detailed. In Beirut, President Joseph Aoun called for the truce to be turned into a permanent agreement.
Now, we all stand before a new phase. The transition from working towards a ceasefire to working towards permanent agreements that preserve the rights of our people, the unity of our land, and the sovereignty of our nation. These negotiations are not a sign of weakness, nor a retreat, nor a concession. Rather, they are a decision stemming from the strength of our belief in our right and our concern for our people.
Aoun said Lebanon is now negotiating on its own terms, stressing the country is no longer a card in anyone's pocket, nor an arena for others' wars. Despite the relative calm, key issues remain unresolved. Hezbollah says it retains the right to resist, while Israeli officials warn operations could continue against remaining threats. Lebanon's health ministry says more than 2,200 people have been killed since fighting began on March 2nd, with thousands more injured. As large numbers of people continue to return to their towns and neighborhoods, the scale of destruction is becoming clear. Families are moving through shattered neighborhoods, damaged roads and collapsed infrastructure, with many homes reduced to rubble. Yet despite the devastation, thousands are pressing on, holding on to fragile hope that this ceasefire could lead to something more permanent.
Tensions are rapidly escalating in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical artery for nearly a fifth of global oil trade. Iranian gunboats have reportedly opened fire on a tanker, while another vessel was struck by an unidentified projectile near the coast of Oman. The incidents come as Tehran signals renewed restrictions on the passage, citing breaches of trust by the United States. This raises fresh concerns over energy security, freedom of navigation, and the risk of a broader regional confrontation, especially as Washington and Tehran may be heading toward high-stakes negotiations in the coming days. To unpack these developments, we're joined by Ivani Vassoler, professor at State University, speaking to us from New York. Professor Vassoler, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Professor Vassoler, how serious are these back-to-back maritime incidents in the Strait of Hormuz? Are we looking at a controlled signal from Iran or a potential escalation spiral? And what do Iran's warnings about restricting the waterway actually mean in practical military and economic terms?
So the situation is really dangerous, particularly now that we are in a ceasefire that soon will expire and nobody knows precisely what is going to happen next. Another problem as we analyze the situation in the Strait of Hormuz are the contradictory information, the contradictory narratives. We have a type of narrative coming from Washington, from the Trump administration, and obviously a different narrative coming from the government of Iran. We imagine that these conflicting messages are part of the negotiation tactics. The actors don't want to expose precisely what are their next moves, but it is obviously dangerous, threatening, as we know already, the energy markets because of the Strait of Hormuz is closed again. And prices are going up with implications for several countries, consumer prices, inflation. And there is always the risk of an escalation and the return of the armed conflict involving Israel, United States, and Iran.
Professor Vassiller, if tensions continue on this trajectory, what are the realistic scenarios the international community should be preparing for?
The realistic scenario should be prepared for more and more volatility of the markets, primarily the energy markets, but also there is markets for fertilizers that go through the Strait of Hormuz. Economic instability in several countries as gas prices, aviation fuel prices, they go up. So there is going to be, and it's already happening, instability in commercial aviation, airlines in several areas of the world, but particularly Asia and Europe, canceling flights. The situation is very tense, and we are expecting the next few days another round of negotiations in Pakistan. What has been said in Washington is that President J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, will be in Pakistan again, but it is absolutely uncertain, the results of the negotiations, because the interests of the United States and the interests of Iran, they collide. There is no agreement.
Professor Ivana Vassiller, thank you very much for talking to A News. We truly appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Australia and Japan have formally launched their $7 billion warship program, with contracts now signed for upgraded Mogami-class frigates for the Royal Australian Navy. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles said the first ship is due to be delivered in December 2029. He said the signing of the Mogami Memorandum will deepen defence industry cooperation between the two countries. First announced in August, the deal marks Japan's biggest military export sale since 2014. Australia plans to use the frigates to help defend key maritime trade routes and its northern approaches in the Indian and Pacific Oceans.
Today we are announcing that contracts have now been...
Angola is preparing to welcome the Pope, with residents in Luanda expressing hope the visit will bring unity and support following recent flooding.
Banners and merchandise have filled the streets of Luanda as the city prepared for the arrival of the Pope. The visit is the first by a sitting Pope to Angola since Pope Benedict XVI travelled there in 2009.
His visit here in our country is interesting. It's very interesting, knowing that it is the third, if I'm not mistaken, or the fourth time that he comes to visit our country. It means that our country is one of the blessed countries, bringing graces and glories. I hope they come to visit more.
Street vendors and shops have also been selling items linked to the visit, while posters welcoming the Pope are visible in several areas of the capital.
The visit is very positive. We are looking forward to it. It is something we have long wanted. It should bring more unity, love and understanding. And after the flooding in Benguela, we also hope it brings solidarity.
The Pope arrived in Angola on Saturday after travelling from Cameroon. His visit is being seen in Angola as a moment of major spiritual and national significance.
Heavy rain has triggered a landslide in northern Peru, forcing dozens of families to flee as the ground continues to shift in El Dorado province.
Families have been evacuated after a landslide that put homes and other buildings at risk. Local officials say the damage has spread after days of heavy rain. Homes, crops, and a preschool have been put at risk, with several buildings already left uninhabitable.
I've lived here for 37 years, and we have to leave overnight? We just can't understand it. That's why I'm calling on the central government and the regional government. Please support us. We are going through a difficult time. My whole town is worried. It's already been 2 days like this, without eating anything, sleeping out in the streets.
Authorities say 172 people from 52 families have been evacuated and moved to temporary shelter in San Jose de Sisa. Officials have ruled out an initial fault line theory, saying the hillside gave way after heavy rains saturated the soil.
We have now clearly realized that this is a large-scale emergency. This indicates that there has been heavy rainfall here, and as a result, there has been erosion and undermining, and then a second hazard, mass movement, as you can already see. You are all aware of it and are witnessing it.
Local authorities say displaced residents, including school children, now urgently need food and shelter.
There are more than 100 people who need food, who are being left homeless, without a place to stay, including school children whose educational institutions have been affected. And I believe it is extremely urgent to receive support from the regional government and the national government.
With the landslide still moving, authorities warn the area remains at risk.
Now let's take a look at the major stories from the region. World leaders and senior officials gather in Turkey for the second day of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Discussions are focused on major global challenges, from conflicts to economic tensions.
The Antalya Diplomacy Forum has entered its second day with a packed agenda shaped by the world's main diplomatic flashpoints. Leaders have been discussing issues ranging from European security and the Middle East to global trade, climate action and new technologies. Speaking on the sidelines, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow sees a need for dialogue with the United States on future economic ties, but stressed that major differences remain between the two sides.
We have a lot of disagreements with the current American administration, especially when it comes to developing matters. No sanctions have been lifted since the times of Biden. Even the diplomatic property has not been returned yet, and our companies have already come under new sanctions. Lukoil, Rosneft, which the Trump administration itself has already announced, without hiding that the goal is US domination of world energy markets.
Meanwhile, Britain's Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper said the Strait of Hormuz has not yet returned to normal operations, despite a ceasefire in the Iran conflict, and called for full restoration of global shipping.
Well, we badly want to see the ceasefire that we have at the moment, the temporary ceasefire, turned into a lasting peace, because that's what's needed, not just to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened for the sake of the global economy, but also to get regional stability as well. So look, we hope every possible effort can be made. That's one of the reasons I'm here, to support the diplomatic efforts to get that enduring peace and to get the straits reopened.
The forum is being held in Antalya from April 17th to 19th and brings together leaders, diplomats and experts to discuss global challenges and possible solutions.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan says Armenia is ready to start implementing the TREE project once the situation around Iran is resolved. He said Armenia is not facing goods shortages despite regional tensions, citing alternative transport routes. He added that Istanbul-Gyumri flights could begin soon in both directions, and said contacts with Turkish and Azerbaijani officials should be added to the working agenda, according to Armenian media. Back-to-back school shootings in Turkey have intensified concerns over security in educational institutions. Grief and fear are spreading across country, communities searching for answers.
Public concern is growing in Turkey after 2 deadly school shootings in consecutive days raised serious questions about safety in educational institutions. The latest attack took place on Wednesday afternoon in Kahramanmaraş, where a shooting at Ayşe Şarlık Middle School left 8 students and 1 teacher dead. 13 others were injured, several of them seriously. The incident came just 1 day after another school shooting in the Siverek district of Şanlıurfa, where a former student opened fire on campus, injuring at least 16 people before taking his own life. A large crowd gathered in Kahramanmaraş for the funeral of a 14-year-old victim on Thursday. Scenes of grief and distress underscored the psychological impact of the attacks.
These incidents have deeply saddened us. The person whose condolence visit we're attending is our nephew. May God have mercy on him. Just as it has deeply affected all of us, it has also affected our children. For example, the child no longer wants to go to school. She doesn't even want to go into her room alone at home anymore. She stays with us.
This incident took place right in the heart of Kahramanmaraş, in the city centre. We send them to get an education, but we do so with anxiety and fear.
This is a very tragic incident. Something similar happened a few days ago in Siverek. Neither teachers nor students feel safe anymore.
The back-to-back incidents have intensified a nationwide debate on school safety, with the public demanding stronger protection and preventive action to avoid further tragedies.
Azerbaijan is expanding its aviation capabilities with a new focus on high-level training and safety standards. A new facility in Baku International Training Center of Azerbaijan Airlines is bringing together advanced technology, international standards and hands-on experience with ambitions that go beyond the country itself.
A new international aviation training hub is set to strengthen pilot and air traffic control training in Azerbaijan, with capacity to train thousands of aviation professionals each year, with a strong focus on developing local talent and reducing reliance on external training.
The center is designed to train up to 3,000 flight crew members and around 30 air traffic controllers every year, and we see potential to grow even further. Overall, this project reflects how we see Azal focusing on safety, quality, and continuous improvement. The Academy has always played a key role in developing aviation professionals in Azerbaijan and for the international professionals as well.
The facility is equipped with advanced simulators designed to replicate real flight and airport conditions, aiming to enhance safety standards and build a competitive national aviation workforce with an emphasis on hands-on practical training rather than theory alone.
As a student, I think it's a very great opportunity for me, for example, for my group mates and also for professional pilots to study here. Why? Because usually pilots need to travel a lot of distance to get their simulator trainings, but right now our local pilots, Azerbaijani pilots, they have an opportunity to undergo their trainings right here.
I believe that National Aviation Academy will give me great opportunities in the future with my career. Training center also meets all international standards and gives solid knowledge to students and practical skills. Here in this simulator we can practice our knowledge obtained during the theoretical lessons.
As a leader of Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Development Group, the laboratory, I can say that we make sure that students take part in all development process. And after developing some projects, we make sure that they can present it in our country or even worldwide. And after getting the base knowledge of aviation industry, they enter the laboratories such as this training center. There were more than 400 aircraft models developed in our academy, and some part of them are the hobby aircraft modeling, and some part of them is the professional aircraft development, and they are being used in Karabakh zone, in industrial zone, even with some part of them were used in the Second Karabakh War. And the students took part in the development of all these drones.
Starting from aerodrome control service, we managed landings and takeoffs, and as well as the ground movements. After that, we had approach control service, which we handled kind of like arriving and departing traffic, as well as sequencing them. And after, we had a simulator in area control service, which we managed kind of like en route traffic over wider airspaces.
Studying with cutting-edge technologies, simulators, provides a highly realistic and learning experience for us. It also allows us to apply our theoretical knowledge, and we can develop our decision-making, and also we learn how we should react in a critical situation, such as an emergency.
My main goal is to become a professional air traffic specialist and continue improving my skills. And also I want to gain experience in real-life operations and be a part of professional aviation team.
Its programs are aligned with international aviation standards, including ICAO and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, and incorporate training methodologies from Germany's Aeronautical Academy, ensuring specialists are trained to operate at the highest global level.
400.
Our air traffic control training programs are developed together with the called DFS German Air Navigation Academy, which is one of the leading institutions in this field. This ensures that both our methodology and technology, they both meet global standards. For cabin crew training, we have introduced new generation simulators, including evacuation trainers for A320, A321, Neo Airbus aircrafts, as well as fire training equipment from international partners like SkyArt.
The center will play a key role in improving aviation safety, supporting long-term sector growth, and positioning Azerbaijan as an emerging aviation training hub in the region. Ayten Şükürova, İlkin Mehdiyev, A-News.
This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay with us for more.